Folks, I'm with George Wan. George, how are you?
I'm doing fine, thanks.
Excellent. We're going to talk about his great company, collegekickstart.com. And George and I we both spawned from the same generational pool, if you will. Well, not. Yeah, we're brothers from another mother, but at any rate. But George has experienced a different world in getting his daughter ready for college. And that gave rise to collegekickstart.com, which is college-kickstart.com, folks. George, tell us what your great company and app are all about.
Sure. Apart from being here in the Valley for 25 plus years doing high tech stuff, I'm also a parent, and so as you alluded to, I had the great pleasure of going through modern day college admissions with my daughter recently, and it was a tremendously different process from what I remember back in my days. Right, 3 applications, a typewriter, and some whiteout. And, my daughter goes through public schools, and, here in California, resources are stretched. So we quickly found ourselves in a situation where either one, we had to figure out everything ourselves, or we needed to take the checkbook out and go find an experienced college consultant to do the work. So we got through the process, but along the way we learned a lot of things, and sort of born out of frustration and a desire to help some family and friends get through the process in a much more saner way. College Kickstart came to be, and so that is how we got started.
How do I use the app? It's an online application. How do I use it?
Yeah, it's a web-based application, and it's really straightforward. What we do is we try to help families create sensible college plans, right? And so given a list of schools you're thinking about and a test score or 2 that you've got in hand, we'll answer 3 questions for you as part of building the plan. First question is, does my list make sense, right? You might be an awesome student with perfect test scores, perfect GPA, but if all you're doing is applying to 8 Ivy League schools, you're fooled, right? Because with 5% admission rates, the odds are slim you'll get in anywhere. So you've got to hedge your bets, right? So the first thing we'll do is we'll try to make sense of the list by looking at the various schools and making sure it's well balanced and set up for success. Okay. The second thing we'll do is we'll look for ways to maximize your admission odds through something called early admission. I don't know if you've heard that term before.
I have.
Yeah, so it tends to be pretty well known at a surface level, but very not so well understood, shall we say. And it turns out that early admission is a neat way not only to apply early to school and hear back, but it turns out to be a way to materially improve your admission odds, right? As we look through the various schools we cover, it's not uncommon to find that the admission rates through early admission are twice as high, 50% as high, 3 times as high as applying regular decision, right? So we have a patent pending methodology that goes off and scours your list and looks for appropriate opportunities to take advantage of early admission to help boost admission odds, right? And the third thing we do, the last thing we'll do, is we'll capitalize on early admission to help you minimize wasted motion. Right? So imagine, for example, you're applying to 8 schools, okay, and all the schools except for one you're interested in, they're all due at the end of the year, right, December 31st. And school number 8 happens to be a school you're interested in and happens to offer an early admission program. Well, if you apply to the school, let's say November 1st, and you hear back in the middle of December if the news is good, if it's your top school, you're done, right? You don't have to do the other 7 applications. And so once again, we have some secret sauce that goes out and works through all the due dates, notification dates, and conditions, and will help figure out ways to let you minimize work and cost. And so that's really what the plan does and what College Kickstart does.
So you have a whole huge database of colleges that I guess is updated regularly?
Yeah, we do. The colleges, they pretty much will update their information once a year, although at very, very different times. I think what we try to do, Zenny, is we try to not just bombard users with lots and lots of information again, right? There's lots of great sites that let you search on 15 criteria to find the perfect schools for you, and there's data up the wazoo. What we're trying to do is we're trying to provide some of the intelligence behind it. Okay, so what do I do with all this information, and how do I take the data that's out there and look at it in a way to help me make sense of my list, to help me boost my odds, and help me minimize work and cost. So we cover over 200 schools, and we're focused on competitive four-year institutions, right? So if you're a B student and you're interested in getting into some of the nation's more competitive liberal arts or national universities, then this is a great opportunity to do something that won't cost you an arm and a leg, that will put you on the straight and narrow and give you a sensible way to get through the process.
What have you learned
Mm-hmm.
about the modern college admission process and colleges today in general that was different than the time that you and I were in college? I was at Texas Arlington. I think you were at MIT. Then I went to Berkeley for grad school.
Yeah.
I almost went to MIT, actually, but
Cool.
I wanted to. I called Berkeley 49 times, and no, it wasn't 29 times in a row. Every single day I called the graduate admissions secretary. She told me I was number one on the wait list, and I basically bugged them to death and got in.
Persistence counts.
Yeah,
good for you.
I wanted to go to Berkeley, but today, what did you learn about today and how things?
Yeah, so the undergrad process is very different. Part of it is just the way the world has changed. Part of it is just I think competitiveness and the number of students that are applying. So let's kind of compare old and new, right? As I mentioned, old, I grew up in New Jersey. There, when you think about colleges, you kind of know what you've heard about. There was no internet, so apart from what you could read in a book or two, your perspective is limited, right? So most people end up applying three, four schools, and that would be it. It wasn't a big deal. But now, not only are there more high school students going to college, right? But the internet is around, and it's a global village, right? So getting information on going to Bowdoin in Maine is as easy as getting information about UC Berkeley, right? And so those things, conspire to open up the world of opportunities to applicants in a very meaningful way. On top of that, right, there's sort of this vicious cycle that's going on within the industry. Number one, as people see admission rates, right, the admission rates to great schools have just plummeted because of the number of applications and applicants that are coming out. So now you'll find a place like MIT, as I mentioned, that used to admit 30% of their students, it now admits 7%, right? Or places like Harvard and Stanford admitting 5%, and schools that were far less competitive back in our days, admitting 20%, right? So what happens, Zenny, is that it creates this vicious cycle with students, right? When they see that, oh my gosh, all these schools I'm trying to apply to, the admission rates are really bad. It just motivates them to feel like they have to apply to more. Right? The problem is, if you apply to more, the net result is admission rates get worse, right? So it's just been going on. It's almost like an arms race in some ways. And so I think that's one of the downsides, the fact that information is so free. The world is, it's a global village now. And I think the byproduct is that there's a lot more intensity and stress in trying to get to school because they see that the admission rates are so low.
Is there a cost associated with using the app?
Yeah, absolutely. The cost is $50, and that's for an application season. You can view us a bit like TurboTax, right? And I think the price for me is something it's a very important thing for me, right? Because what I feel really badly about is I feel that in some ways the way that admission works these days, it's like if you've got the resources, then you can spend the money on consultants and take advantage of all sorts of things to help give your child or give yourself an edge, right? And I find that not ideal. And so I think one of the things I've really tried to do here is to try to provide something that is affordable, that provides people a way to get their arms around the problem and to navigate college admissions without having to break the bank.
So, in closing, anything you want to add for our viewers?
Yeah, I think there's probably two things that I would add. Is that one thing is that we did a study over the summertime, right, with the set of users that were testing our product, and we found that in over 90% of the cases, lists were too aggressive, right? So either people don't know, or they feel very confident in grades, that the grades they've got, and they just don't realize that it's important to have balance, right? So I'd say number one is make sure, no matter how good your grades are, make sure that you've got a list that's balanced and set up for success, no matter what the admission gods do to you, right? Second thing I'd say is that you really owe it to yourself to look into early admissions. There's several different flavors of them, but it's the one thing you can do without having to have mom and dad donate a building or to be an Olympic athlete or to be a Nobel laureate. It's one thing you can do that can make a difference for nothing more than applying 45 to 60 days earlier than normal.
Hey, is there a mobile app version?
Our site is it's responsive, so it should work pretty well. You know, some of the input's a little bit trickier, but it definitely set up to work on smartphones or work on your desktop.
Exciting stuff. Hey, thanks a lot.
Sure thing. Thanks, Andy.